Chapter 33. A London Cab Horse. My new master's name was Jeremiah Barker, but as everyone called him, Let me begin again. Chapter 33. A London Cab Horse. My new master's name was Jeremiah Barker, but as everyone called him Jerry, I shall do the same. Polly, his wife, was just as good a match as a man could have. She was a plump, trim, tidy little woman, with smooth dark hair, dark eyes, and a merry little mouth. The boy was nearly 12 years old, a tall, frank, good-tempered lad, and little Dorothy, Dolly they called her, was her mother over again, at 8 years old. They were all wonderfully fond of each other. I never knew such a happy, merry family before or since. Jerry had a cab of his own, and 2 horses which he drove and attended to himself. His other horse was a tall, white, rather large-boned animal called Captain. He was old now, but when he was young, he must have been splendid. He had still a proud way of holding his head and arching his neck. In fact, he was a high-bred, fine-mannered, noble horse, every inch of him. He told me that in his early youth he went to the Crimean War. He belonged to an officer in the cavalry and used to lead the regiment. I will tell more of that hereafter. The next morning, when I was well groomed, Polly and Dolly came into the yard to see me and make friends. Harry had been helping his father since the early morning, and had stated his opinion that I should turn out a regular brick. Polly brought me a slice of apple, and Dolly a piece of bread, and made as much of me as if I had been the Black Beauty of olden time. It was a great treat to be petted again, and talked to in a gentle voice, and I let them see as well as I could that I wished to be friendly. Polly thought I was very handsome, and a great deal too good for a cab, if it was not for the broken knees. Of course, there's no one to tell us whose fault that was, said Jerry, and as long as I don't know, I shall give him the benefit of the doubt. For a firmer, neater stepper I never rode. We'll call him Jack, after the old one. Shall we, Polly? Do, she said, for I like to keep a good name going. Captain went out in the cab all morning. Harry came in after school to feed me and give me water. In the afternoon I was put into the cab. Jerry took as much pains to see if the collar and bridle fitted comfortably as if he had been John Manley over again. When the crupper was let out a hole or two, it all fitted well. There was no bearing rein, no curb, nothing but a plain ring snaffle. What a blessing that was! After driving through the side street, we came to the large cab stand where Jerry had said good night. On one side of this wide street were high houses with wonderful shop fronts, and on the other was an old church and churchyard surrounded by iron palisades. Alongside these iron rails a number of cabs were drawn up, waiting for passengers. Bits of hay were lying about on the ground. Some of the men were standing together, some were sitting on their boxes reading the newspaper, and 1 or 2 were feeding their horses with bits of hay and a drink of water. We pulled up in the rank at the back of the last cab. 2 or 3 men came round and began to look at me, and pass their remarks. "Very good for a funeral," said one. "Too smart looking," said another, shaking his head in a very wise way. "You'll find out something wrong one of these fine mornings, or my name isn't Jones." "Well," said Jerry pleasantly, "I suppose I need not find out till it finds me out, eh? And if so, I'll keep up my spirits a little longer." Then came up a broad-faced man, dressed in a great grey coat with great grey capes and great white buttons, a grey hat, and a blue comforter loosely tied round his neck. His hair was grey too, but he was a jolly-looking fellow, and the other men made way for him. He looked me all over, as if he had been going to buy me, and then, straightening himself up with a grunt, he said, "He's the right sort for you, Jerry. I don't care what you gave for him, he'll be worth it." Thus my character was established on the stand. This man's name was Grant, but he was called Grey Grant, or Governor Grant. He had been the longest on that stand of any of the men, and he took it upon himself to settle matters and stop disputes. He was generally a good honoured, sensible man, but if his temper was a little out, as it was sometimes when he had drunk too much, nobody liked to come too near his fist, for he could deal a very heavy blow. The first week of my life as a cab horse was very trying. I had never been used to London, and the noise, the hurry, the crowds of horses, carts, and carriages that I had to make my way through made me feel anxious and harassed, but I soon found that I could perfectly trust my driver, and then I made myself easy and got used to it. Jerry was as good a driver as I had ever known, and what was better, he took as much thought for his horses as he did for himself. He soon found out that I was willing to work and do my best, and he never laid the whip on me unless it was gently drawing the end of it over my back when I was to go on. But generally I knew this quite well by the way in which he took up the reins, and I believe his whip was more frequently stuck up by his side than in his hand. In a short time I and my master understood each other as well as a horse and a man can do. In the stable, too, he did all that he could for our comfort. The stalls were the old-fashioned style, too much on the slope, but he had 2 movable bars fixed across the back of our stalls, so that at night, and when we were resting, he just took off our halters and put up the bars, and thus we could turn about and stand whichever way we pleased, which is a great comfort. Jerry kept us very clean, and gave us as much change of food as he could, and always plenty of it. And not only that, but he always gave us plenty of clean fresh water, which he allowed to stand by us both night and day, except, of course, when we came in warm. Some people say that a horse not ought to drink all he likes, but I know if we are allowed to drink when we want it, we drink only a little at a time, and it does us a great deal more good than swallowing down half a bucketful at a time, because we have been left without till we are thirsty and miserable. Some grooms will go home to their beer and leave us for hours without dry hay and oats and nothing to moisten them. Then of course we gulp down too much at once, which helps to spoil our breathing and sometimes chills our stomachs. But the best thing that we had here was our Sundays for rest. We worked so hard in the week that I do not think we could have kept up to it, but for that day. Besides, we had then time to enjoy each other's company. It was on these days that I learned my companion's history. Chapter 34. An Old Warhorse. Captain had been broken in and trained for an army horse. His first owner was an officer of cavalry going out to the Crimean War. He said he quite enjoyed the training with all the other horses, trotting together, turning together, to the right hand or to the left, halting at the word of command, or dashing forward at full speed at the sound of the trumpet or signal of the officer. He was, when young, a dark, dappled, iron grey, and considered very handsome. His master, a young high-spirited gentleman, was very fond of him, and treated him from the first with the greatest care and kindness. He told me he thought the life of an army horse was very pleasant, but when he came to being sent abroad, over the sea in a great ship, he almost changed his mind. "That part of it," said he, "was dreadful. Of course, we could not walk off the land into the ship, so they were obliged to put strong straps under our bodies, and then we were lifted off our legs in spite of our struggles, and were swung through the air over the water to the deck of the great vessel. There we were placed in small closed stalls, and never for a long time saw the sky, or were able to stretch our legs. The ship sometimes rolled about in high winds, and we were knocked about and felt bad enough. However, at last it came to an end, and we were hauled up and swung over again to the land. We were very glad, and snorted and neighed for joy when we once more felt firm ground under our feet. We soon found that the country we had come to was very different to our own, and that we had many hardships to endure besides the fighting, but many of the men were so fond of their horses that they did everything they could to make them comfortable, in spite of snow, wet, and all things out of order. "But what about fighting?" said I. "Was not that worse than anything else?" "Well," said he, "I hardly know. We always liked to hear the trumpet sound and to be called out, and were impatient to start off, though sometimes we had to stand for hours waiting for the word of command. And when the word was given, we used to spring forward as gaily and eagerly as if there were no cannonballs, bayonets, or bullets. I believe so long as we felt our rider firm in the saddle and his hand steadily on the bridle, not one of us gave way to fear, not even when the terrible bombshells whirled through the air and burst into 1,000 pieces. I, with my noble master, went into many actions together without a wound, and though I saw horses shot down with bullets, pierced through with lances, and gashed with fearful sabre cuts, though we left them dead on the field or dying in the agony of their wounds, I don't think I feared for myself. My master's cheery voice as he encouraged his men made me feel as if he and I could not be killed. I had such perfect trust in him that whilst he was guiding me, I was ready to charge up to the very cannon's mouth. I saw many brave men cut down, many fall mortally wounded from their saddles. I heard the cries and groans of the dying. I had cantered over ground slippery with blood, and frequently had to turn aside to avoid trampling on wounded men or horse. But until one dreadful day, I had never felt hot terror. That day I shall never forget. Here old Captain paused for a while and drew a long breath. I waited, and he went on. It was one autumn morning, and as usual, an hour before daybreak our cavalry had turned out, ready caparisoned for the day's work, whether it might be fighting or waiting. The men stood by their horses waiting, ready for the orders. As the light increased, there seemed to be some excitement among the officers, and before the day was well begun, we heard the firing of the enemy's guns. Then one of the officers rode up and gave the word for the men to mount, and in a second every man was in his saddle, and every horse stood expecting the touch of the rein or the pressure of his rider's heels, all animated, all eager. But still we had been trained so well that, except by the champing of our bits and the restive tossing of our heads from time to time, it could not be said that we stirred. My dear master and I were at the head of the line, and as all sat motionless and watchful, he took a little stray lock of my mane, which had turned over on the wrong side, laid it over on the right, and smoothed it down with his hand. Then, patting my neck, he said, "We shall have a day of it today, Bayard, my beauty. But we'll do our duty, as we have done." He stroked my neck that morning more, I think, than he had ever done before, quietly on and on, as if he were thinking of something else. I loved to feel his hand on my neck, and arched my crest proudly and happily, but I stood very still, for I knew all his moods, and when he liked me to be quiet and when gay. I cannot tell all that happened on that day, but I will tell of the last charge that we made together. It was across a valley, right in front of the enemy's cannon. By this time we were well used to the roar of heavy guns, the rattle of musket fire, and the flying of shot near us, but never had I been under such a fire as we rode through on that day. From the right, from the left, and from the front, shot and shell poured in upon us. Many a brave man went down, many a horse fell, flinging his rider to the earth. Many a horse without a rider ran wildly out of the ranks, then, terrified at being alone with no hand to guide him, came pressing in amongst his old companions to gallop with them to the charge. Fearful as it was, no one stopped, no one turned back. Every moment the ranks were thinned, but as our comrades fell, we closed in to keep them together, and instead of being shaken or staggered in our pace, our gallop became faster and faster as we neared the cannon, all clouded in white smoke, while the red fire flashed through it. My master, my dear master, was cheering on his comrades with his right arm raised on high, when one of the balls, whizzing close to my head, struck him. I felt him stagger with the shock, though he uttered no cry. I tried to check my speed, but the sword dropped from his right hand. The rein fell loose from the left, and sinking backward from the saddle, he fell to the earth. The other riders swept past us, and by the force of their charge I was driven from the spot where he fell. I wanted to keep my place by his side and not leave him under that rush of horses' feet, but it was in vain. And now, without a master or a friend, I was alone on that great slaughter ground. Then fear took hold of me, and I trembled as I had never trembled before. And I too, as I had seen other horses do, tried to join in the ranks and gallop with them, but I was beaten off by the swords of the soldiers. Just then, a soldier whose horse had been killed under him caught at my bridle and mounted me, and with this new master I was again going forward, but our gallant company was cruelly overpowered, and those who remained alive after the fierce fight for the guns came galloping back over the same ground. Some of the horses had been so badly wounded that they could scarcely move from the loss of blood. Other noble creatures were trying on 3 legs to drag themselves along, and others were struggling to rise on their sore feet. When their hind legs had been shattered by shot, their groans were piteous to hear, and the beseeching look in their eyes as those who escaped passed by and left them to their fate I shall never forget. After the battle, the wounded men were brought in, and the dead were buried. "And what about the wounded horses?" I said. "Were they left to die?" "No. The army farriers went over the field with their pistols, and shot all that were ruined. Some that had only slight wounds were brought back and attended to, but the greater part of the noble willing creatures that went out that morning never came back. In our stables there was only about 1 in 4 that returned. I never saw my dear master again. I believe he fell dead from the saddle. I never loved any other master so well. I went into many other engagements, but was only once wounded, and then not seriously. And when the war was over, I came back again to England as sound and strong as when I went out." I said, "I have heard people talk about war as if it was a very fine thing." "Ah," said he, "I should think they never saw it. No doubt it is very fine when there is no enemy, when it is just an exercise and a parade and a sham fight. Yes, it is very fine then. But when thousands of good brave men and horses are killed or crippled for life, it has a very different look." "Do you know what they fought about?" said I. "No," he said, "that is more than a horse can understand. But the enemy must have been awfully wicked people if it was right to go all that way over the sea on purpose to kill them." Chapter 35. Jerry Barker. I never knew a better man than my new master. He was kind and good, and as strong for the right as John Manley, and so good-tempered and merry that very few people could pick a quarrel with him. He was very fond of making little songs and singing them to himself. One he was very fond of was this: "Come, father and mother, and sister and brother, come, all of you, turn to and help one another." And so they did. Harry was as clever at stable work as a much older boy, and always wanted to do what he could. Then Polly and Dolly used to come in the morning to help with the cab, to brush and beat the cushions and rub the glass, while Jerry was giving us a cleaning in the yard and Harry was rubbing the harness. There used to be a great deal of laughing and fun between them, and it put Captain and me in much better spirits than if we had heard scolding and hard words. They were always early in the morning, for Jerry would say, "If you in the morning throw minutes away, you can't pick them up in the course of the day. You may hurry and scurry and flurry and worry, you've lost them forever, forever and aye." He could not bear any careless loitering and waste of time, and nothing was so near making him angry as to find people who were always late, wanting a cab horse to be driven hard to make up for their idleness. One day, two wild-looking young men came out of a tavern close by the stand and called Jerry. "Here, cabby, look sharp. We are rather late. Put on the steam, will you, and take us to Victoria in time for the 1 o'clock train. You shall have a shilling extra." "I will take you at the regular pace, gentlemen. Shillings don't pay for putting on the steam like that." Larry's cab was standing next to ours. He flung open the door and said, "I'm your man, gentlemen. Take my cab. My horse will get you there all right." And as he shut them in with a wink towards Jerry, said, "It's against his conscience to go beyond a jog trot." Then, slashing his jaded horse, he set off as hard as he could. Jerry patted me on the neck. "No, Jack, a shilling would not pay for that sort of thing, would it, old boy?" Although Jerry was determinedly set against hard driving to please careless people, he always went a good fair pace, and was not against putting on the steam, as he said, if only he knew why. I well remember one morning, as we were on the stand waiting for a fare, that a young man carrying a heavy portmanteau trod on a piece of orange peel which lay on the pavement, and fell down with great force. Jerry was the first to run and lift him up. He seemed much stunned, and as they led him into the shop, he walked as if he were in great pain. Jerry, of course, came back to the stand, but in about 10 minutes one of the shopmen called him, so he drew up to the pavement. "Can you take me to the South Eastern Railway?" said the young man. "This unlucky fool has made me late, I fear, but it is of great importance that I should not lose the 12 o'clock train. I should be most thankful if you could get me there in time, and I will gladly pay you an extra fare." "I'll do my very best," said Jerry heartily. "If you think you are well enough, sir." He looked dreadfully white and ill. "I really must go," he said earnestly. "Please to open the door, and let us lose no time." The next minute Jerry was on the box, with a cheery chirrup to me, and a twitch of the rein that I well understood. "Now then, Jack, my boy," said he, "spin along. We'll show them how we can get over the ground, if we only know why." It was always difficult to drive fast in the city in the middle of the day, when the streets are full of traffic, but we did what could be done, and when a good driver and a good horse who understand each other are of one mind, it is wonderful what they can do. I had a very good mouth, that is, I could be guided by the slightest touch of the rein, and that is a great thing in London, amongst carriages, omnibuses, carts, vans, trucks, cabs, and great wagons creeping along at a walking pace, some going one way, some another, some going slowly, others wanting to pass them, omnibuses stopping short every few minutes to take up a passenger, obliging the horse that is coming behind to pull up too, or to pass and get before them. Perhaps you try to pass, but then something else comes dashing in through the narrow opening, and you have to keep in behind the omnibus again. Presently you think you see a chance and manage to get to the front, going so near the wheels on each side that half an inch nearer and they would scrape. Well, you get along for a bit, but soon find yourself in a long train of carts and carriages, all obliged to go at a walk. Perhaps you come to a regular block-up and have to stand still for minutes together, till something clears out into a side street or the policeman interferes. You have to be ready for any chance, to dash forward if there be an opening, and be quick as a rat dog to see if there be room and if there be time, lest you get your own wheels locked or smashed, or the shaft of some other vehicle run into your chest or shoulder. All this is what you have to be ready for. If you want to get through London fast in the middle of the day, it wants a deal of practice. Jerry and I were used to it, and no one could beat us at getting through when we were set upon it. I was quick and bold, and could always trust my driver. Jerry was quick and patient at the same time, and could trust his horse, which was a great thing too. He very seldom used the whip. I knew by his voice and his click click that when he wanted to get on fast, and by the rein where I was to go, so there was no need for the whipping. But I must go back to my story. The streets were very full that day, but we got on pretty well as far as the bottom of Cheapside, where there was a block for 3 or 4 minutes. The young man put his head out and said anxiously, "I think I had better get out and walk. I shall never get there if this goes on." "I'll do all that can be done, sir," said Jerry. "I think we shall be in time. This block-up cannot last much longer, and your luggage is very heavy for you to carry, sir." Just then the cart in front of us began to move on, and then we had a good turn. In and out we went, as fast as horseflesh could do it, and for a wonder had a good clear time on London Bridge, for there was a whole train of cabs and carriages all going our way at a quick trot, perhaps wanting to catch that very train. At any rate, we whirled into the station with many more just as the great clock pointed to 8 minutes to 12 o'clock. "Thank God we're on time," said the young man. "And thank you too, my friend, and your good horse. You have saved me more than money can ever pay for. Take this extra half-crown." "No, sir, no. Thank you all the same. So glad we hit the time, sir. But don't stay now, sir. The bell is ringing. Here, porter, take this gentleman's luggage. Dover line, 12 o'clock train. That's it." And without waiting for another word, Jerry wheeled me round to make room for other cabs that were dashing up at the last minute, and drew up one side till the crush was past. "So glad," he said, "so glad. Poor young fellow. I wonder what it was that made him so anxious." Jerry often talked to himself quite loud enough for me to hear when we were not moving. On Jerry's return to the rank, there was a good deal of laughing and chaffing at him for driving hard to the train for an extra fare, as they said, all against his principles, and they wanted to know how much he had pocketed. "A good deal more than I generally get," said he, nodding slyly. "What he gave me will keep me in little comforts for several days." "Gammon," said one. "He's a humbug," said another, preaching to us and then doing the same himself. "Look here, mates," said Jerry. "The gentleman offered me half-a-crown extra, but I didn't take it. It was quite pay enough for me to see how glad he was to catch that train, and if Jack and I choose to have a quick run now and then to please ourselves, that's our business and not yours." "Well," said Larry, "you'll never be a rich man." "Most likely not," said Jerry, "but I don't know that I shall be the less happy for that. I have heard the commandments read a great many times, and I never noticed any of them said, 'Thou shalt be rich.' and there are a good many curious things said in the New Testament about rich men that I think would make me feel rather queer if I was one of them. If you ever do get rich, said Governor Gray, looking over his shoulder across the top of his cab, you'll deserve it, Jerry, and you won't find a curse come with your wealth. As for you, Larry, you'll die poor. You spend too much in whipcord. Well, said Larry, what is a fellow to do if his horse won't go without it? You never take the trouble to see if he will go without it. Your whip is always going as if you had the St. Vitus's dance in your arm, and if it does not wear you out, it wears your horse out. You know why? You know you are always changing your horses, and why? Because you never give them any peace or encouragement. Well, I have not had good luck, said Larry. That's where it is. And you never will, said the governor. Good luck is rather particular who she rides with, and mostly prefers those who have got common sense and a good heart. At least, that is my experience. Governor Gray turned round again to his newspaper, and the other men went to their cabs. Chapter 36. The Sunday Cab. One morning, as Jerry had just put me into the shafts and was fastening the traces, a gentleman walked into the yard. "Your servant, sir," said Jerry. "Good morning, Mr. Barker," said the gentleman. "I should be glad to make some arrangements with you for taking Mrs. Briggs regularly to church on Sunday mornings. We go to the new church now, and that is rather further than she can walk." "Thank you, sir," said Jerry, "but I have only taken out a 6 days' license, and therefore I could not take a fare on a Sunday. It would not be legal." Just an author's note: 6 days, about a 6 days license. A few years since the annual charge for a cab license was very much reduced, and the difference between 6 and 7 days cab was abolished. "Oh," said the other, "I did not know yours was a 6 days cab, but of course it would be very easy to alter your license. I would see that you did not lose by it. The fact is, Mrs. Briggs very much prefers you to drive her." I should be glad to oblige the lady, sir, but I had a 7 days license once, and the work was too hard for me, and too hard for my horses. Year in and year out, not a day's rest, and never a Sunday with my wife and children, and never able to go to a place of worship, which I had always been used to do before I took to the driving box. So, for the last 5 years, I have only taken a 6 days license, and I find it better all the way round. "Well, of course," replied Mr. Briggs, "it is very proper that every person should have rest, and be able to go to church on Sundays, but I should have thought you would not have minded such a short distance for the horse, and only once a day. You would have all the afternoon and evening for yourself, and we are very good customers, you know." "Yes, sir, that is true, and I am grateful for all favours, I am sure, and anything that I could do to oblige you, or the lady, I should be proud and happy to do. But I can't give up my Sundays, sir. Indeed, I can't. I read that God made man, and he made horses, and all other beasts, and as soon as he had made them, he made a day of rest, and bade that all should rest one day in 7. And I think, sir, he must have known what was good for them, and I am sure it is good for me. I am stronger and healthier altogether now that I have a day of rest. The horses are fresh too, and do not wear up nearly so fast. The 6-day drivers all tell me the same, and I have laid by more money in the savings bank than ever I did before. And as for the wife and children, sir, why, hearts alive, they would not go back to the 7 days for all they could see." "Oh, very well," said the gentleman. "Don't trouble yourself, Mr. Barker, any further. I will inquire somewhere else." And he walked away. "Well," says Jerry to me. We can't help it, Jack, old boy. We must have our Sundays. Polly, he shouted. Polly, come here. She was there in a minute. What is it all about, Jerry? Why, my dear, Mr. Briggs wants me to take Mrs. Briggs to church every Sunday morning. I say I have only a 6 days license. He says, get a 7 days license and I'll make it worth your while. And you know, Polly, they are very good customers to us. Mrs. Briggs often goes out shopping for hours or making calls, and then she pays down fair and honourable like a lady. There's no beating down or making 3 hours into 2 hours and 2 hours and a half as some folks do, and it is easy work for the horses, not like tearing along to catch trains for people that are always a quarter of an hour too late, and if I don't oblige her in this matter, it is very likely we shall lose them altogether. What do you say, little woman? I say, Jerry, says she, speaking very slowly, I say, if Mrs. Briggs would give you a sovereign every Sunday morning, I would not have you a 7 days cabman again. We have known what it was to have no Sundays, and now we know what it is to call them our own. Thank God you earn enough to keep us, though it is sometimes close work to pay for all the oats and hay, the license and the rent besides, but Harry will soon be earning something, and I would rather struggle on harder than we do than go back to those horrid times when you hardly had a minute to look at your own children, and we never could go to a place of worship together or have a happy, quiet day. God forbid that we should ever turn back to those times. That's what I say, Jerry. And that is just what I told Mr. Briggs, my dear, said Jerry, and what I mean to stick to. So don't go and fret yourself. Polly, for she had begun to cry, I would not go back to the old times if I earned twice as much, so that is settled, little woman. Now cheer up, and I'll be off again to the stand. 3 weeks had passed away after this conversation, and no order had come from Mrs. Briggs, so there was nothing but taking jobs from the stand. Jerry took it to heart a good deal, for of course the work was harder for the horse and man, but Polly would always cheer him up and say, never mind, father, never mind. Do your best and leave the rest. 'Twill all come right some day or night. It soon became known that Jerry had lost his best customer. And for what reason? Most of the men said he was a fool, but 2 or 3 took his part. If working men don't stick to their Sunday, said Truman, they'll soon have none left. It is every man's right, and every beast's right. By God's law we have a day of rest, and by the law of England we have a day of rest, and I say we ought to hold to the rights these laws give us, and keep them for our children. All very well for you religious chaps to talk so, said Larry, but I'll turn a shilling when I can. I don't believe in religion, for I don't see that your religious people are any better than the rest. If they are not better, put in Jerry, it is because they are not religious. You might as well say that our country's laws are not good because some people break them. If a man gives way to his temper and speaks evil of his neighbour and does not pay his debts, he is not religious. I don't care how much he goes to church. If some men are shams and humbugs, that does not make religion untrue. Real religion is the best and the truest thing in the world, and the only thing that can make a man really happy or make the world any better. If religion was good for anything, said Jones, it would prevent your religious people from making us work on Sundays, as you know many of them do. And that's why I say religion is nothing but a sham. Why, if it was not for church and chapel goers, it would hardly be worthwhile our coming out on a Sunday. But they have their privileges, as they call them, and I go without. I shall expect them to answer for my soul, if I can't get a chance of saving it. Several of the men applauded this, till Jerry said, that may sound well enough, but it won't do. Every man must look after his own soul. You can't lay it down at another man's door like a foundling and expect him to take care of it. And don't you see? If you are always sitting on your box waiting for a fare, they will say, if we don't take him, someone else will, and it does not look for any Sunday. Of course, they don't go to the bottom of it, or they would see if they never came for a cab, it would be no use your standing there. But people don't always like to go to the bottom of things. It may not be convenient to do it, but if you Sunday drivers would all strike for a day of rest, the thing would be done. And what would all the good people do if they could not get to their favourite preachers? Said Larry. "'Tis not for me to lay down plans for other people," said Jerry. "But if they can't walk so far, they can go to what is nearer, and if it should rain they can put on their mackintoshes as they do on a weekday. If a thing is right, it can be done, and if it is wrong, it can be done without. And a good man will find a way, and that is true for us cabmen as it is for the churchgoers."